All right, everybody. I have not watched this yet, and I am so ready to see it, finally. I've heard that this was going to end up happening, and while I've got mixed feelings on Destiny, I have to give credit where credit is due. I was inspired to do, like, lefty political streaming stuff because of Destiny, and I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for him. So, got mixed opinions, but generally they lean kind of on the negative side for more interpersonal reasons. He's done some pretty uncharitable things to friends of mine that I do not appreciate, and that's something I can't really look past because it's on a deeper level than political disagreement, right? Regardless, he's a big figure in this space, so there's no pretending he doesn't exist. Like, he's going to be making waves in the space, and I gotta cover him regardless. And he put out a video titled Destiny versus Alex Jones, Glenn Greenwald and Darren Beatty, featuring Krasenstein brothers. Now, I knew this was going to be happening because of mumblings on Twitter about it for like a couple days, but I was expecting, because I never saw a date that it was going to happen, I was expecting it to be like months or weeks out, far enough out that it could get canceled and never actually happen, that it would, realistically fall through. To my surprise, I woke up this morning and saw this in my recommended, and here we go. It actually happened. Destiny has debated Alex Jones. I do not know what happens here. I saw one 30-second clip on Twitter that was funny as fuck, and that, like, it was Destiny doing an impression of Alex Jones, and I knew right away, god damn, it's as good as we were hoping it would be. It's as good as we were hoping it would be. All right, I'm ready for this. We're obviously not going to watch the whole thing, but we'll watch like a decent chunk of it, and I'll give my takes on things. But I'm ready to witness this. I'll definitely be watching the rest of it off stream, because this is a mandatory viewing type debate. It's surprising that Destiny is going into this like 100%, by the looks of it, 100% good faith, like a notepad and a pen, wanting like argue actual points. Because I wonder, he's really good at that. And he's generally pretty good at bringing people in, because that's like a pretty good way of presenting yourself to an audience. He looks like he really cares about the topics generally, and I think he does most of the time. I don't think there's many things he talks about that he doesn't unironically care about. I don't know if this is going to work with Alex Jones fans. Like Destiny's debate bro, logic bro, like way of doing things where he hammers in on an actual issue and expects answers to a question about an actual issue. I don't know if that's actually going to resonate much with Alex Jones fans, because they're just going to look at it as a triggered liberal trying to persecute him. Alex Jones has done this really good job of like shrinking down, or building an audience and shrinking it down to the most radical and hyper supportive people there are within his fan base. I don't know how convincible they are at this point. Many of them have watched and listened to him for decades. Like, there are a lot of like boomers, like big time boomers, that listen to Alex Jones and have listened to him for decades. He's good at filling people's brains with worms. Yeah.
Would you have been okay in the year 2000 if Gore refused to certify the vote because he didn't like what was happening in Florida?
A lot of Democrats did want him to do that.
Answer the question.
Yeah, and I would have actually. Yes, a lot of Democrats were angry about that.
I'm not asking if I'm asking you would be okay personally if he refused to certify the vote.
I think there were two.
You want to answer the question? What would have happened if Pence would have thrown out the vote?
No, that's a hypothetical. Trump wanted a 10-day investigation.
No, but
I don't care
he
what Trump
also wanted Pence to throw out the
Yeah, what would have happened? What would you have called that?
And we're pushing for that.
Yeah, what would we have called that? Can I get a name for that? If you don't want to call it a coup or an insurrection, what would you call that?
Well, I'd call it taking Trump off the ballot and saying we can't vote for him.
I know you won't answer because you probably know he's guilty. That's fine. What about you or Glenn? Glenn, what would you call it if the president was able to entrench his power by asking his vice president to throw out the vote unilaterally, which is what he was trying to do? Do you want to deny the facts? Do you want to deny that it's a...
To be fair, if he keeps them quiet and like stumbling enough, they might look dumb enough that it resonates with people. We need 10 times speed. This is 1.3 times speed. Is this Destiny's set? No, this is this is Alex Jones' set. I think he rebranded his show post the lawsuit. I think this is what Alex Jones' show looks like now, right? Or are they on another show and not InfoWars or Alex Jones' new show? I have no clue. I don't follow these degenerate spheres of the internet that closely. I like it when he's mean to this type of person. Destiny's like Hale. You know? Like, hail sucks when it's falling on your head. It really, really does. But when you're inside and watching it fall on the head of someone you really don't like, you really kind of like hail a little bit. That's pretty that's pretty much my opinion of Destiny. He's like ice rocks falling from the sky.
It's a coup. What part?
A coup.
Why didn't he call them off immediately if he thought it didn't make him look good?
It was happening while he was giving a speech.
Wrong. The reason why he didn't call them off is because Kim, Giuliani, and Eastman were making phone calls to other senators and congressmen asking them to decertify the electoral vote.
No.
You were there, but you weren't. Do you acknowledge that happened, or do you not acknowledge it?
We're talking about the crowd.
I don't care about the crowd. I'm saying that as the riot was raging on and he was sitting there sipping his Diet Coke, if this really made him and his followers look bad, why didn't Donald Trump make a video immediately?
I'm about to do it because I can talk over you really easy.
That's what you've been doing the whole time.
No, you're doing it.
I look forward to you dodging the question again. Go ahead.
You're doing it.
No, you.
So, you.
No, you.
You. Both of you.
Keep doing it.
Okay.
Jump into it. I want to introduce our panel.
All right, this seems like it's going to get good. From what I'm hearing, this is a different, like, conservative chud podcast. Oh, I recognize this guy. This is Moonlord. This is Moonlord from Tim Pool's show. Okay. We got some familiar faces here.
Of incredible people, as I said earlier, and I'm going to start from the end and give you guys a chance to introduce yourselves. We have Ed Krasenstein.
Yeah, how's it going? I'm Ed Krasenstein. You know me on X at Ed Krasen, also the twin brother of Brian.
Thanks for pointing out the...
Okay. Are these guys, like, progressive? Because I could have sworn these two, like, are liberal posters on Twitter, but I haven't seen their posts in a long time. Are they, like, conservative now or something? Or are they still left-wing? Like, I haven't seen posts from them in a real long time. They might have blocked me. I don't know that for sure, but, like, it's just weird. I haven't seen a post from them in, like, years. But I know they were, like, big on Twitter, like, in 2019, 2020 on, like, lefty Twitter. Does anyone know? Are the Krasen brothers, like, still lefty liberal posters on Twitter, or are they trying? Well, I guess we'll find out based on their arguments here.
Krasenstein, not Krasenstein.
Well, it can actually be either. You can do Krasenstein or Krasenstein, and I really don't care what you use. So.
It's Frankenstein, not Stein.
Not Frankenstein. But...
that was Alex Jones, if you didn't know. We also have Brian Krasenstein.
Hey, Ian, it's great to be here. I'm Brian Krasenstein, known as Krasenstein on X. Ed's slightly better looking and more intelligent twin brother.
And modest as well. Probably the most modest of the Krasensteins. Next to Brian, we have Stephen Bonnell, known as Destiny. What's happening, man?
Whoa.
Hey, what's up? You know me on YouTube at Destiny. My real life name is Steven, and I scream and shout at people on the internet for a living.
Next to this dude, we got Alex Jones. Alex, explain yourself.
Well, I don't think I probably needed much of an introduction, but, I mean, I was there on January.
How much you want to bet he's going to give a little bit here in his introduction to how he has been oppressed and attacked by the legal system for what he said about the Sandy Hook families?
And I saw what happened. And so it's a very important discussion we're about to have tonight. I'm glad everybody came. We need to have more of this, not just left and right, but just different groups of people debating and discussing. I'm really glad that Zero Hedge and their great subscription service, people supporting it, is financing this. And so you're going to see a lot more of this, people supporting Zero Hedge. And so I'm just honored to be here with you guys in Austin, Texas.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to Zero Hedge. Great company. Great people, too. Really great people involved with the company. And to your left, my right, Darren Beatty. What's happening, man?
Great to be here. Thank you. I'm Darren Beatty. I run a news site called Revolver.news, which is reported extensively on January 6th. And you can also see me on X at Darren J. Beatty.
And you're a Trump advisor.
My favorite thing about conservatives and their rhetoric around January 6th was how it started. Like, when it first started, there was lots of excuses for it. Like, oh no, this is just a peaceful protest on the Capitol. Then it went undeniably violent because videos and footage and reports were coming out of the Capitol that it was getting violent. And they started saying, oh, it's Antifa. Antifa are the ones being violent. Antifa are killing people. Antifa are provoking the police. Antifa are trying to break in. And then, once those right-wingers started getting arrested, and it became a political point to defend them, all of a sudden the Antifa January 6ers point completely dissolved away, and they were actually patriots who did nothing wrong. When before they were saying they were Antifa trying to do an insurrection, was their original talking point, and they just moved straight off of that. It's possibly one of the most shameless topics that right-wingers talk about, because they have to just make excuses for that time they tried to destroy American democracy.
And speechwriter,
yes,
and a former professor, and you helped quarterback a lot of the groundbreaking stuff that Tucker Carlson put up.
Indeed.
It's also your presence.
Thank you.
And we also have coming in remote live, Glenn Greenwald from your studio in Brazil. What's happening, Glenn?
Brazil.
Hey everybody, Glenn Greenwald. I'm a journalist. I'm the host of System Update on Rumble. I had planned to be there in person. A little logistical problems intervened, and I wish I could be, but I'm really looking forward to participating. And I just want to echo Alex. I think what Zero Hedge is doing is so important, organizing these kind of substantive structured debates among people who obviously disagree pretty strongly on things, and yet nonetheless can have what I hope will be a civil and spirited debate, what I expect it will be. So I'm really looking forward to it.
I don't really know much about Glenn Greenwald. What I've heard has not been good, though. I've not heard any good things about him. Only bad things.
Appreciate being asked.
Yes, that is my job, is to make sure that it maintains civility, structure, organization, and that we don't talk over each other, that we end up listening to each other. The real value of humanity, one of the most powerful tools we have is communication. So I think tonight's going to be an exemplary example of that. Let's go for this. The first question I got for you guys, and this is really for the entire panel, and anyone that wants to start it off, maybe we can start with you, Edson, just because you're on the end and we can move around, is January 6, 2021. Was it an insurrection? And before you answer, I want to read this. This is actually what it's called 18 U.S. Code 2383, rebellion or insurrection.
Yeah, let me do an overhead shot. This is right out of Cornell Law here.
Excellent. All right, I'm going to start reading this. This is according to the U.S. Code. Whoever incites, sets on foot, assists, or engages in any rebellion or insurrection against the authority of the United States or the laws thereof, or gives aid or comfort thereto, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 10 years, or both, and shall be incapable of holding any office under the United States. It technically doesn't define insurrection. It's the code talking about what an insurrection is. Of course, they use the word insurrection.
Well, it's the code of how one should be punished if they are participant or the starter or supporter of an insurrection or rebellion. So this is explaining what Trump should be punished with, which is being stricken from the ballot, being in prison for no more than 10 years, a fine, etc., etc. So what is an insurrection? I mean, you can look at plenty of definitions, but I'd say, yeah, January 6th was an attempted insurrection. Just because it didn't succeed doesn't mean it wasn't a crime. In the same way that, like, breaking someone's window and trying to get into their house to steal their belongings, but you, like, fall through the window and cut your arm open and almost bleed out, and they come in and they call the police and you get, like, taken to the hospital. Just because you failed to break in and steal while someone was home doesn't mean you're not going to get charged like you succeeded, because you intended to do so. So, yeah, I say we ought to treat Trump legally like we would treat anybody else. Just because he was the president doesn't mean he should have special privileges above the law. Trump supporters think he should, and they've gotten more and more brazen and just outright stating he should, in their opinion. But no, I prefer if he is subject to all the same rules and laws that we are. I think most of you guys would agree. This isn't exactly a hot take.
In the actual code itself. But what do you think? Do you guys think it was an insurrection?
So
Yes.
I personally believe it was an insurrection.
Oh, good.
And I base that on the fact that 20 court decisions called it an insurrection. And the fact that there was a bill passed in the Senate that called them a mob of insurrectionists.
They're going to call that the swamp. They're going to call any court decisions the swamp. They're going to say, oh, yeah, well, of course, you've got a bunch of different court decisions coming from the swamp that is Washington that wants to destroy Trump. So, of course, they would call it an insurrection. The funny thing is that we've got, like, multiple leaked texts and, like, videos and audio of Alex Jones going on rants about how much he hates Donald Trump, wishes he never met him, and regrets supporting him because of how much of a failure he thinks Trump ended up being. But now Donald Trump is back in the political, like, front runner, and he has to completely walk back all that negative shit he said and pretend to be on the Trump train again. But they all, like, Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones, all these people, right after Trump lost, already let it slip how much they supposedly never liked the guy. I don't know, Phoenix 88. I hope so.
I think the bill passed, or it was in the House of Representatives, 406-21. That was a statute to award the police officers medals, and it referred to these individuals as insurrectionists. So, I mean, I think the term can be subjective. I think, people can say nobody was charged with violating Section 2383 of Title 18, which is insurrection and rebellion statute. And nobody was, right? But I don't think that defines whether the event was an insurrection. When I say insurrection,
there's not a lot of political will to do so, and a lot of these people had just extraordinary campaigns made to get them some of the best lawyers you could imagine. There were huge conservative money organizations funding the lawyers for these guys, because them getting the lightest sentence possible is a massive W for the right in America. They know that that's a political win. It's a culture war talking point. And the more convictions there were for Jan 6, the worse it makes Trump look. So they've been doing everything they can to soften the legal consequences for as many of the Jan 6ers as possible. Extremist experts fear that Trump supporters might start killing people or put together another OKC bombing type event if Trump is jailed. I mean, they'll definitely try to kill people, but like, this is an argument for like arming yourself if you're progressive. If we're literally at a point where people think, like experts think, that actually levying the law against Trump equally as you would any other citizen would result in mass killings by Trump supporters, then that's a very clear sign that progressives need to buy more guns. Because like, yeah, I always assume that if Trump is going, like, gets seriously arrested and taken off the ballot, all the Trump supporters are going to get violent. Obviously. Like, and that news could come any day. Yeah, you should be ready. They think threatening us is going to free him? Well, I don't think so. I don't think they're threatening. I think they're more so saying, like, if he gets arrested, then they believe that this country is against him because he can do no wrong. A lot of them genuinely believe he can do no wrong. And so if he gets arrested, it must mean that the country is biased against him, the government, the swamp, the laws, everything, the police, and they'll think it is the right thing to do to engage in a violent insurrection again.
I don't mean everybody there was partaking in insurrection. There are people who were peaceful. The people who walked into the Capitol and did nothing, I don't think that they were insurrectionists. I think they violated the law, but I don't think they were partaking in insurrection. I do think the Proud Boys were partaking in insurrection. I think you could say Donald Trump incited the insurrection. I do.
It's really hard to say, but I would argue that anybody who entered the Capitol when it was against the law to do so was partaking in the insurrection. Everybody who, like, broke into the building, went inside as the police retreated the line, like anyone who went past the line the police set up and had to retreat to for their own safety is an insurrectionist. If you were, like, pushing back against the police at the Capitol building and forcing them inside and then forced yourself inside and further and further and further, regardless of whether or not you attacked anyone, you're an insurrectionist. Absolutely. Yeah.
Destiny, what do you think, man?
I would say the plot from start to finish is quite obviously an insurrection. The only way to get around that is to either justify an insurrection, which is what most conservatives do, they don't realize it, or to deny that an insurrection could ever happen, or if you're not aware of all the facts of what happened. I think that Donald Trump and his cronies had a very coherent plan that they tried to enact from start to finish, starting with false claims of voter fraud, leading to false slates of electors.
They set up, he's completely right here, by the way, Donald Trump and his campaign were setting up for his loss. Donald Trump definitively knew, for a fact he knew, he was not going to win the election. And yet, he prepared the claim that if he loses, the election was stolen. They were preparing this narrative for weeks before the election actually happened. The narrative was always, if I don't win, the election was stolen. He was always saying that. He was always saying that in a fair election, he simply could never lose. Yeah, Congress made this public. Yeah, it's part of the documents that came out recently, part of the January 6th trial.
I think that Donald Trump and his cronies had a very coherent plan that they tried to enact from start to finish, starting with false claims of voter fraud, leading to false slates of electors that filed themselves as state electors under perjury, which is what they did, up to the violence that happened on the day of the certification of the vote, where Donald Trump and his friends continued to try to delay the peaceful transfer of power by contravening the certification of the Electoral College vote.
And what I want to make sure that we don't force this into like what they want to call a debate where you got to be called on or anything. So if any of you guys, Glenn, you as well, man, if any of you guys want to jump in.
Yeah, the two of them just went. I want Glenn to go, but I just want to say something here. I was there, and I was investigated and subpoenaed by the Justice Department in at least 5 criminal investigations, and I was forced to testify in front of the Jan 6 committee, which they've now been destroying the records because the records show the opposite of what they said. Trump and all of us had a stage.
So, right there. So anytime these people make a claim like that, immediately it's bullshit. Okay, the January 6th committee is burning records because it's bullshit. Does that sound right? Okay, so you can tell Destiny's writing that down right now, and as soon as Alex Jones stops talking, he's going to go down a list of bullshit points that Alex Jones made and challenge him on them. So what info has been destroyed in regards to the January 6th Commission? What resources do you have on that? Is that backed up by anything? Do you have any sources for that? Like, that kind of thing. Because that is a strong claim, and I guarantee you, Alex Jones either A, made it the fuck up, I made it the fuck up, or got it from Breitbart. Or his own show, InfoWars. He made it up and, like, purported it on his own show, or one of his people made it up.
Rented by the Supreme Court. He was supposed to have another round.
For the record, by the way, these InfoWars guys cite themselves as a source, like articles they wrote as a source, all the fucking time. How many times have we covered a Paul Joseph Watson video where he cites a article, then we look up the title of the article that he cites to only find out it's an InfoWars article published by Paul Joseph Watson? It's shameless.
There, we showed up before Trump finished his speech. People were getting tear gas and hit by bullets, and there were a bunch of provocateurs leading an attack against the police, and they broke through. And then this million-plus people then got blamed as insurrectionists, and Biden gave a big speech yesterday saying they're all terrorists. So by that extension, Kamala Harris, as the VP candidate, was bailing people out of jail that burned down police stations and firebombed federal buildings. And the idea of Biden's speech yesterday, making his whole campaign about January 6th, saying political violence is never good, the Democrats are the ones that call for political violence. So I would...
Okay, let's say that's true. Let's say Kamala Harris was paying the bail of people who firebombed police stations. Okay. A protest in which people destroy buildings is, I would say, pretty bad. I'm going to be honest, guys. I know, lib-cucky optics, politics, or whatever. But I do think it is bad when progressives destroy property or even hurt, and especially hurt people in protests. The more peaceful the protest, the better. The right typically uses the left engaging in violence to get their point across, and they use the left giving them attention when they protest to get their point across, right? My mom told me about this. There's a town not too far away from Palm Springs where my mom lives where there was a big Nazi protest. Like the Westboro Baptist Church and like a bunch of alt-right groups like came out to do a protest in the middle of the town. And it very likely could have gotten a bunch of media attention and caused a bunch of internet like stir and everything, but they knew that's what these guys want. They want to get like their protests to have a bunch of national coverage and attention and a Twitter trend and everything. So instead, the residents of the town took their tractor trailers and just kind of lined them up all along the road where they were holding their big march and basically blocked every view that wasn't within the street where the march was happening away so that like the kids going to school wouldn't have to see it, people going about their day wouldn't have to see it. They were only given a permit for this area that's like very secluded within the town, and they banned any press from going and like photographing it and everything. The most video you could get or photo you could get is just the sides of trailers with some like people in between. And so they didn't give them any attention, and they just were completely ignored. They got to do their little hate parade completely alone in the middle of a deserted street, blocked off from the view of everybody, no press attention, and eventually they just wore themselves out and left. Because the fact is, if there's no lefties to trigger on this, like, you know, counter-protesting and screaming at them, then they don't care. Like, they get bored and they leave and they realize it's pointless because they are powerless without a reaction. Is banning the press from covering it legal? It's not that they banned the press from covering it. It's more so that they just, like, heavily discouraged it. They set it up in such a way that would be really hard to cover, and they just secluded it. They put it in a spot where there's not a lot of vantage to get like high and look down at it. You would have to use a drone, but there's a lot of trees right above that have like their thick brush, so it's really hard to get a drone high enough to see the whole thing. And it's blocked off with tractor trailers. You can look up the story and find what I'm talking about, no doubt, because it was pretty recent. But yeah, it was, the press covered it. It's just they covered it in this way rather than covering it as a Nazi protest in the middle of the town. They covered it as a town quells Nazi protest, starves them of attention. That's how they covered it instead. So they didn't really ban them. They just sort of discouraged them from covering it the way they would have otherwise, so they'd cover it in a different way, which is, you know, encouraging the town for doing something that clever.
Was there with a bullhorn, I could only reach 100 yards out when the tear gas was hitting me, saying, don't go in, don't fight the police. This is a setup. And we have hundreds of videos. And so regardless of what the left tries to do, they're all out there of people taking off their Antifa stuff and putting on the
Wait, he's actually doing it. No way. Wait, he's actually doing it. There's videos of people taking off their Antifa stuff and putting on right wings. Is that what he's about to say? Why would you go there in Antifa gear in the first place if you were trying to pretend to be a right-wing Trump supporter to frame the right-wingers? Why would you ever have gone there in Antifa gear in the first place? Why would you change? Why? Because if you went in with Trump supporters as an Antifa guy, they'd call you out, they'd attack you, they'd be pissed off at you, they might shoot you. That makes no sense. And it's also not real. He's actually dredging up the conspiracy I earlier said has been dead for a while, and they moved off of it, but apparently they're still on that shit, or at least Alex Jones still is.
Trump garb, and the police fake arresting people, attacking them, and then high-fiving them. I mean, this is all...
Wait. Did he almost say Nazi, but then say Trump garb instead? Wait, listen to what he said.
Don't go in, don't fight the police. This is a setup. And we have hundreds of videos. And so regardless of what the left tries to do, they're all out there of people taking off their Antifa stuff and putting on the Trump garb. And
I swear he almost said Nazi there. I swear he almost said Nazi. Maybe not. I don't know. That was either a muh or a nuh syllable he started with and cut himself off with. I don't know.
And the police fake arresting people, attacking them, and then high-fiving them. I mean, this has all come out in the new footage, and it's all getting...
Wait, fake arresting them? How were they fake
They would grab them and arrest them, and then drag them in, and then high-five them, you know, take the handcuffs off and high-five them. Those videos, what people are going to take everything I say, they're going to put it on X and show what I said. That's where we dominate.
Yeah,
and so it's what I'm getting at. Let me say this.
They're going to put the clips, and they're going to show what I said. They're going to put it on Elon Musk's Twitter. That's where we dominate. We do so well on Twitter. Oh, God. Remember, guys, one of the most frustrating things is that these people consider success as far as, like, making money and subs and likes and views online. They consider that a sign that they are in the right. I can't tell you how many times, and it's hilarious how it goes up over the years, right? Like, you can ask any lefty YouTuber and they get these comments. It's very regular. Like, let's say I cover someone like Blair White. I've covered Blair White a lot, from when I had like 20,000 subs to now when I have nearly 90,000 subs. So over time, every, like, let's say 10,000 subs, the number goes up where people say, oh, well, if you're so in the right, then why do you only have 10,000 subs and Blair has millions? Oh, why do you only have 20,000 and Blair has millions? Why do you only have 30, 40, 50, 60? And now they round up to 100,000 in most of their comments. Because for a lot of these people, they actually think, oh, if you're right, why don't you have more subs? A lot of people actually, within the right, operate in this weird internet content-brained way where the amount of likes a video has must mean the person saying stuff in the video is right. And it's a dangerous thought process that's getting shamelessly popular.
What I'm getting at here is they now admit hundreds of federal officers were there. So when Trump started his speech, this whole thing began with Ray Epps saying, go into the Capitol. He told the Jan 6 committee, yeah, it's true, it's in his text messages. He told family, I orchestrated it. So under pressure, they finally indicted him, but only recommended 6 months. So a few hundred people got manipulated into fighting the police. They were led and driven by provocateurs and other groups. They were others, then they opened the doors and the police wave them in hundreds of videos. They walk through the velvet ropes, and then they indict over 1,000 people that just walked through velvet ropes. And then now we're told in the National Security Directive of President Biden, the #1 threat is the American people. And he had a declaration of war yesterday against all Trump supporters.
One thing that Alex Jones is extraordinary at is just nonstop spewing bullshit. He's really, really good at that. Alex Jones is extraordinary at that. He just nonstop gish gallops a conspiracy theory made up on the spot. I don't even think he got this from anywhere. I don't even think he pulled this from like Breitbart or InfoWars or anything. I think he just is making this stuff up on the fly.
Says to protect democracy, we're not going to let you vote for Trump. So as Stalin said, I care not who casts the votes, I care who counts them. Well, Biden doesn't care who casts the votes. He cares who's allowed on the ballot. So we've already won. No one's buying this. And when this happened 3 years ago, the Wall Street Journal had to put a retraction, but they said I was there as a coward telling people to attack. Well, no, they wouldn't let me put the video on Twitter where I was saying don't go in. But the truth is, it's coming out. And so that's the bottom line here. And this attempt by Biden to cast the American people as the enemy in all these movies about martial law and civil war.
Look at this. Look at how his rhetoric is like, to cast the American people as the enemy. Ah, yes, my fans, the people who agree with me, are the American people. We're the majority. We're everybody. We are the American people. Biden is victimizing everybody. If you agree with me, if you feel like you have been victimized by Biden, you're a true American. And if you feel like you're a true American, you've been victimized by Biden, so you should support me. It's a very cult leader way of speaking.
And race war. That's their only hope because the corrupt, evil Democratic Party and its evil twin, the Republicans, they've lost power and populism is rising. Quite frankly, this was not an insurrection. It was an insurrection that would have been guns. And it's in the Declaration of Independence that it's our right and duty to get rid of a government that's destructive of what the people want. But I'm not calling for violence. We're winning this politically, but we're being cast as about to be violent the next 10 months because all these indictments and all these attacks to not let Americans vote for who they want aren't working and are backfiring. And all the big Democrat lawyers now admit it. Axelrod admits it. Carville admits it. They all.
I like how Alex Jones, I've never seen a debate where he doesn't say, oh yeah, also everything I'm claiming has been admitted to by everybody I say is bad. And it's complete bullshit. He just is a complete bullshit artist. He doesn't care if he gets fact-checked live. He's been doing this for years and years and years. He has such an established audience of people that don't care about the truth, that, you know, the truth is whatever Alex Jones just said. He doesn't have to say anything true. He doesn't have to care. He doesn't have to worry about getting called out for lying. He lives in bliss.
I'll admit this attempt, like we're in Venezuela or something, to take Trump off the ballot when he's never been convicted of insurrection. This is a military tribunal, U.S. code from the Civil War. If a military tribunal found you were guilty of being involved in insurrection, that meant after the war ended.
Can I ask you a question? Alex, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So do you think the Confederates during the Civil War were partaking in insurrection?
I mean, in retrospect, because I wasn't alive then, I think the South got manipulated into that. I thought there was real issues between the North and South, the abolitionists.
The South got manipulated into that. All right, I'm going to summarize what actually happened, okay? So basically, for a very long time, there was just like a good handful of states, and we decided that the best way to go about things would be to half and half which states could do slavery and which states could not do slavery. And we set a line. It's why there's this like straight line of states. When you look at the map of America, that's like the residue of that line, where you can do slavery south of this line. You can't do slavery north of this line. And a bunch of the states in the South were pissed off about this because, like, as more states were coming in that were anti-slavery, this meant that the popularity of slavery started to get outnumbered within the U.S. government at a higher level, and because the South at the time was relying so heavily on slavery economically and had such a cultural attachment to it because they were racist, they felt that the continual adding of states that were not pro-slavery meant that they were being put under attack, and this led to a massive amount of strain, and eventually, like, everything split. And, like, I'm pretty sure it started out with, like, a few militias just, like, fighting and, like, attacking groups of free men. It was, like, the start of the Civil War, and it escalated into, like, a more organized split of two different powers fighting against each other, which was actually a bunch of different groups on the South side, while the North was far more, like, you know, it was America. They weren't traitors. Like, the Confederacy was disjointed as fuck. It's super complicated history, but the idea that the South was manipulated is hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. A shit ton of people in the South were so dedicated to preserving slavery that despite not even being of an economic class that could benefit from the owning of slaves, they still fought and died to defend slavery. There were a lot of people who just wanted to preserve it, no matter what economic class they were in the South. They made it part of their identity. And nowadays, the fact that slavery is so frowned upon, but the Confederacy is so fundamentally important to modern-day conservatives, they have to find a way to whitewash something that was so heavily, undeniably historically tied to slavery.
Had a good point, and slavery needed to end. It was really about the North outlet.
So just to be clear, the person that's defending the J6 riders won't say that the Confederate States were engaged in insurrection.
Well, that's not what I see. So here's what happens.
Funnily enough, a Confederate flag flew for the first time ever on the American Capitol during the January 6th insurrection, when the insurrectionists came in and one of them was flying a Confederate flag. Not even during the Civil War did a Confederate flag make it to the U.S. Capitol, but on that day, it did. Think about that. In 2020, or 2021, a Confederate flag flew for the first time at the U.S. Capitol. It's a sad thought.
No, hold on. That's not true.
That's what it sounded like you said. Will you correct the record? So do you think they were engaged in insurrection?
I was trying to talk, and the thing I said was, I think the South was wrong, and then you just said that I support what the South did. No.
I didn't say you supported that. I said that you said that they weren't engaged in insurrection. Do you think the Confederate States were engaged in insurrection?
Was that because there were rebellions during Reconstruction at the end of the Civil War, and they were saying if you lead an uprising...
Alex Jones has already been triggered. It's about to get good already. I like this one chatter who's got, who posts the nail biting and sweat emote, because Alex Jones is getting angry, and he's kind of like a massive hulking gorilla. And somewhat physically imposing, I will say. I'd be a little frightened to piss off Alex Jones in a one-on-one debate, because I'm not entirely convinced he wouldn't try to eat me.
Against the northern occupation of the South, you're precluded from running from office because they were worried about Southerners getting office again, like Jefferson. No, I do not support the Civil War or slavery, and I'm not a quote Confederate.
Okay, but was it an insurrection? My question is,
I would be scared if I were Destiny, because Destiny's like a fun-sized meal for Alex Jones and sitting right next to him. So I'd be frightened in his position.
Was it an insurrection? Yes or no?
Yes, if you were no. The law, yes, I think that it was a civil war, and you can say an insurrection.
Okay, so is it insurrection? Did anybody get charged with insurrection rebellion?
What I'm saying is...
With violating statute. Did anybody get charged? No, I'm asking you. You just said it was insurrection. Did anybody get charged with violating the insurrection and rebellion statute?
Yes, people did.
No, because there was no statute there. That's my point.
No,
you don't need to violate that statute in order to be partaking in insurrection, because the Civil War was an insurrection, and nobody got charged with violating that. No, that's what I'm saying. That's my point, Alex. You're changing the subject because you know it's correct.
Even the Democratic Party lawyers on CNN say you have to be convicted under the 14th Amendment of this before you can. You can't.
What? Okay, it's so weird how he's got these boogeymen that he has designated Democratic Party lawyers on CNN. It's like he's just jumbling as many scary words for Republicans to hear together as possible. CNN, Democratic, lawyers, and trying to put together the scariest sounding fear bait for Republicans he possibly can. Yeah, it's like he's doing the thing where you type 3 words to begin a sentence on your phone, and then you keep clicking the first recommended word over and over again to fill in the sentence. That's what he's doing, but with the first scary right-wing boogeyman word that comes to mind.
You don't get convicted under the 14th Amendment. You get convicted under Section 2383 of Title 18.
Well, let's slow down a little.
A congressional resolution to give awards to Capitol Police is not a conviction of Donald Trump to remove him from the ballot. He's been indicted for saying they stole an election. So now they want to take him off the ballot so you can't vote for him, which is pure stealing of an election. I think this is not, he's the Yankee. He's not.
Notice he is actively just saying whatever sounds good at the time. He relies on loudly yelling and not giving anyone time to breathe. And, well, he does it best in his own show when there is no one challenging him. But this is what he does, and his audience will eat it up. I don't feel like they can be convinced, most Alex Jones viewers. I don't feel like they can be convinced. I feel like to be a like Alex Jones fan for real, you've got to be real far gone. Like, you've got to be far gone to be an unironic Alex Jones fan in 2024.
Somebody in Georgia. He's not Robert E. Lee. This has nothing to do with it.
Also, a quick fact check. On the 14th Amendment, it doesn't require a conviction under such a period. You can literally put it on the text on the screen. There's it does not say it needs to be convicted.
I guess we need to define the difference. Alex, one second. We need to define the difference between the casual term insurrection and the legal definition of insurrection.
Yes. Well, there's another thing we need to talk about. So, yes, there's the casual term. There's the etymology of the term insurrection, which simply suggests a rising up. So by that definition, that could encompass a wide range of things.
Black Lives Matter.
Wait. So there's a rising up. Then there's the legal definition, but we have...
Okay, so the fact is, every American has the right to freedom of speech, to their First Amendment right, to freedom of speech and expression, right? So that means you can gather and protest, you can say whatever you want, within reason. Obviously, like, the screaming fire in a crowded theater thing isn't allowed, but like that's pretty good. That's an important thing. I like that we have that. My concerns about the right are about people who would take that right away from us. I use the word right a lot there. My concerns about conservatives are centered around the idea that these people, if they were to gain unanimous power like they want to, they would take our First Amendment rights away. Everything that Republicans say they want to protect and claim the left is attacking, they want to destroy and only want to exist insofar as they can weaponize it. Freedom of speech would not exist in a fully Trump-controlled America. That would not exist. They do not like dissent. There's a reason why, when there are political movements and protests that they don't agree with, they can't call it a protest. They can't call it people exercising their First Amendment rights. It has to be an uprising, a riot. It has to be mobs of people burning down buildings, despite the fact every bit of data argues that's not the case. Because they cannot accept that a popular, legal, constitutionally protected movement is gaining popularity in America.
Have politically weaponized court systems, so that's not even, I think, a proper standard. I think the proper standard is the sweep of a...
How have court systems been politically weaponized? In what way? How has that happened? That's never been demonstrated. Donald Trump hasn't even been sent to prison before, despite breaking the law numerous times.
Proper historical perspective. Does the event of January 6th compare to the antecedent that we've been discussing, the Civil War? So if the question is, is Civil War an insurrection? My question is the scope and scale of the event of January 6th comparable to the Civil War? Because Joe Biden has directly made this comparison, which I think is flatly ridiculous, and that comparison has to...
The idea that he would say, this when we've got like a hard right dominant Supreme Court is crazy to me. When we've got like a stacked conservative Supreme Court, this guy's arguing the political, our justice system has been, our court systems have been weaponized by the left is crazy to me. When the highest court in all of the land is dominated overwhelmingly by conservatives. That is a wild statement to make, in my opinion.
Be valid in order for these ridiculous Section 3 arguments to have any force or legitimacy. And I think any common sense...
It's a lie. I'm going to shut up. It's a lie on its face. They say it's bigger than Pearl Harbor and 9/11. That is bull.
Okay, so here, let me finish what my point.
Yeah, do that, and then I want to go to Glenn for a second.
So my point is that two things. The Civil War was an insurrection. I think it's hard to argue that. Nobody got charged with a crime of violating the Insurrection and Rebellion Statute, 2383. What about 1992, the LA riots? George Herbert Walker Bush, he invoked the Insurrection Act. 12,000 people were arrested. 63 people were killed. Hundreds were injured. Was that an insurrection? What do you guys think?
Yeah, no, it's a declaration of federal martial law.
But was it an insurrection? Because
Was Bush correct in calling it an insurrection? Do you defend the LA riots as not an insurrection, Alex Jones? This is a good question. This is a good question, unironically.
Nobody there was charged with violating. Nobody there was charged with violating Section 2383, the insurrection and rebellion statute. But we still consider that an insurrection, right?
By that yardstick, Kamala Harris bailing out people that firebomb federal buildings.
That is not true.
Glenn, talk to me. You have something to say.
Okay. Let's say that she did do that. The people firebombing federal buildings weren't doing it because they didn't like the election and wanted to overturn the results and destroy American democracy. They were doing it because they disagree with how the police behave. That's not the same thing. They also didn't kill people. If they burned down a federal building and that's it, which was the majority... Like, the thing that a lot of Republicans will try to tell you or convince you of is that there's anything even resembling a equal level of political radical violence on the left and the right. The fact is that even the most radical progressives don't engage in anywhere near the same amount of violence as the radical right-wingers. Political terrorism is overwhelmingly dominated by right-wing political ideologues. Like, overwhelmingly. These people rely on making you think that that number, that like stacking, is something close to 50-50, when in no way is that the case. The reality is that even the small percentage of progressive radicals that engage in terrorism, even that small percentage, the terrorism they do engage in overwhelmingly is rarely ever violence against people. It's usually violence against property, which is why Alex Jones can't even say setting people on fire or shooting people or beating people to death here, because even that would be too brazen of a lie. And Destiny could just say, wait, who? Who got killed? Who got killed? Wait, who got set on fire? Because even Destiny didn't claim people were getting murdered. He claimed people were lighting dumpsters on fire, and that's what led to the clip that got him banned. The fact is, even the worst of people on the left overwhelmingly tend to just light buildings on fire that are empty and destroy property, which is bad. Property damage isn't violence, such a lib take. You can say it's a lib take, but I think it's bad because of how it plays in the general political space and how it doesn't really tend to have a very productive outcome. It seems like it's mostly just a way of venting frustrations, valid frustrations, but, you know, I don't... It's much like being upset at a situation and destroying something out of anger. No matter how valid your anger was at the situation, you know, you destroyed something that, like, when you could have just been trying to calm down and focusing on a solution, right? It gives healing for some people, Zan. Yeah, I get that, but at the same time, like, it can be healing, but it's also a crime, and it's not... I'm not saying that as, like, a moral own or anything. I'm saying that as, like, do you want to encourage people to commit crimes that could end their life? Like, as far as they're concerned. You know, once you get into the prison system, your life is pretty fucked in America, right? Like, do you want to encourage people to try to engage in peaceful, legal protests, or do you want to encourage them to engage in property damage? I'd say that not endorsing people that engage in destructive forms of protest, I'll call it, no matter how valid their protests are, is generally a good thing. I'm not going to virtue signal about how it's so bad, but I think it's generally good to encourage the opposite. Because, you know, much like what they did in that small town I mentioned before, where they just deprived the neo-Nazi protesters of attention, deprive radical right-wingers the attention or the actions of the left that they want to be able to capture and spread around to make the entire left look bad. Yeah, it's bad optically. I think it's only useful if you're specifically destroying property with a goal in mind, like destroying factory equipment or something. Yeah. Like, for example, I have way more respect for some, like, crack team of, like, eco-terrorists who, like, bust into some massive factory farm and release thousands of cattle into, like, open fields adjacent or some shit like that. I don't know how that stuff works, but I've heard about people that do that, or people who do, like, investigative journalism and, like, get photos of how awful it is inside of, like, sweatshops, factory farms, things like that, and publish it online when these companies claim they do like open range grazing or whatever, and like completely throwing a wrench in their advertising. I think stuff like that, especially if it involves like, you know, here is a thing that is causing damage, we'll target it and destroy it, and it's just property and no one's gonna get hurt. I think that's defensible, you know, morally, like on hypothetically, not in real life, you know, not in real life. YouTube, in Minecraft, a Minecraft oil pipeline from Tekkit.
Yeah, I actually think what Destiny and what Ed are saying are very important. First of all, I was going to say that I think one of the problems with how these things are debated is that a lot of people these days have very binary prisms for understanding things. A lot of that comes from YouTube debate where you have to declare yourself on one side or the other. So Destiny said, oh, everybody either hates this insurrection, thinks it's an insurrection, or they deny it happens, or they think it's good. And there's so much middle ground. Namely that, for me, this was a political protest that spilled over into a riot where a small minority of the people engaged in violence. I don't think we want to urge that to happen. We don't want to defend that. I consider that lamentable. But the fact that...
Well, a large portion of them entered the Capitol illegally, and then on top of that, a good fair portion of them, after beating their way into that big, the Congress room, a bunch of them, like, there was photos of one of them jumping over one of the rows of chairs with a, like, hand full of zip tie cuffs. One of the insurrectionists entered the room where they were expecting to find all of the elected officials with a bundle, like, not a bundle, a handful of zip tie cuffs, presumably to take elected officials hostage. Which is not unheard of when it comes to right-wing radicals, by the way. Do you guys remember that, like, right before the election, there was a big story about some Democratic mayor or, like, local elected representative who got kidnapped and, like, put into someone's trunk, like some crazy conservative's trunk, and, like, kept hostage in, like, a cabin or something like that? I don't remember all the details. It's been years. But, like, it was, like, a mayor, a Democrat mayor, who got kidnapped and held hostage. And this was, like, by a Trump supporter. And this was weeks before the election, if I remember correctly. Like, maybe a couple months at the most. It's not the first time these people have gone into a situation like this with the intent of kidnapping Democratic public officials for their Big Daddy Trump, as they call him. That is what a lot of Trump supporters call him. They're very gay about him. It's quite odd.
It's laughable to call this an insurrection is actually demonstrated by the examples that they're using. This was a 3-hour riot that was extremely easily subdued. It doesn't remotely compare.
Oh yeah, it was Governor Whitmer of Michigan. Yep. Yeah, it was the kidnapping plot for Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan. Yeah. Like, these people are fucking insane. What the hell is this panel, Lamau? Buckhorn25. This is the Alex Jones panel with Destiny on it. Destiny and Alex Jones are debating. That's all you need to know. That's all that's important here.
To any prior insurrections, let alone to the Civil War. The only people who were killed on January 6th were 4 people, all 4 of whom were Trump supporters, 2 of whom dropped dead of a heart attack and 1 from a speed overdose, because these were not exactly a well-trained militia.
Okay, I will say, Republicans love to claim when somebody at a protest died and it's inconvenient for them to admit it was because of the violence of the protest, they love claiming it was a heart attack. A lot of people go into cardiac arrest when they die. So if you look at the official cause of death on a lot of people's like death certificate, it's usually like included in there as some form of cardiac arrest, because that's usually how people go out, like in the end. And so usually they'll point to that and say, look, this person just died of a heart attack. They did it with Heather Heyer, where she got hit by a car. It triggered a heart attack because, you know, physical trauma and like fear of getting hit by a car, and flipped up in the air and falling onto concrete, and she died. And the right tried to claim she never got hit by the car, and she was just quote unquote fat and scared and had a heart attack just from seeing the car. That was the Nazi conspiracy meant to defend the neo-Nazi driver who drove into the crowd at Charlottesville. So yeah, these people, they just make up conspiracies like this on the fly. They're evil, evil people.
And when Jack Smith went to charge Donald Trump with multiple crimes, he had a lot of options to charge him with, and he charged him with a lot of crimes, including very dubious ones. He did not charge him with inciting an insurrection for reasons that I think we ought to ask ourselves why. But the fact that this is such a minor event in history is demonstrated by the fact that the media, who needed this to be a major event, immediately started lying about what happened, saying that Brian Sicknick was murdered when he had his head bashed in through a fight with a fire extinguisher, only to learn that actually he called his mother that night. He was fine. He died the next day of what the coroner said were natural causes, because the media knew that if you can't say that even one person supposedly perpetrating the insurrection killed anybody, pulled out a gun, let alone discharged the weapon, all of which is true, it's a joke to call this an insurrection. At best, it's a riot. And that's the reason why Trump hasn't been charged with an insurrection. The only time he ever commented on January 6th about whether he thought there should be violence or not was when he said the following. He said, "I know that everyone here will soon be marching."
Who remembers when these people were like marching on the Capitol and breaking in, and like hours were passing as people were doing live coverage of it, and people were like, "We're still waiting on a statement from the president." His last statement was, "I love you all. You're very special. You're my special little pog champs," and telling them to go march to the Capitol. It's been hours, and we've yet to get any public statements from President Trump. We're still waiting. We're still waiting. That was pretty much like half the fucking day of January 6th. Was Donald Trump just like seemingly buying time and stalling before making a statement denouncing it, which would inevitably make them leave, because he was hoping they would succeed, no doubt. He dragged his feet and then made the world's weakest statement. Yeah, he obviously was like very upset that his people weren't successfully able to storm in there and make him president again. That's what he wanted. He was like kind of resting easy, knowing that his backup plan was he could rally his base to march on the Capitol after a big speech he could do that brings a lot of his fans, and the pure numbers would allow them to just wash through the Capitol, and it would be a people's coup, he probably thought of it as. And it just didn't work out, and he was no doubt very disappointed his plan didn't work out. It was, like, premeditated, too. He was actively saying, if I lose, the election was rigged. There is no reality in which I lost in a fair election. He's been saying it. He was saying it for months before the election actually happened.
Marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. He urged them to be...
Also, are we also forgetting how he tried to obstruct the democratic process all throughout everything, too? Remember how much he tried to ban people from being able to do mail-in ballots, and now Republicans are freaking out about states deciding they aren't going to allow him on the ballot because he incited an insurrection? Somehow that's not fair, but banning mail-in votes is fair. It's nonstop hypocrisy.
Peaceful in how they went there. To the extent there was violence, I think you can make the argument that the FBI informants that even the New York Times admits were there were the ones that urged it. But even if the people who were there were the ones responsible,
urged
at best
violence.
This is a riot. You could so easily make the case that the 2020 riots were a far greater insurrectionary threat than anything that happened on January 6th.
That's perfectly said. I would ask I would ask the left over here. I know Ian's asked the questions. I mean, I don't know. Did you guys see Biden's speech? I mean, it was an hour long that no one there was good. They were all there. Over a million people. I was there. And then we marched down there to have another rally, and then I see this terrible thing happening. It was medieval, and then Biden saying they're all bad.
Yeah, Glenn Greenwald used to be a lefty, but now he's like a right-wing conservative conspiracy dude. He's a massive grifter.
And we can't let you vote for Trump. I mean, come on, man.
We have a clip from Biden's speech I want to play, and then let's get back to you, Destiny. You had something to say, but if you guys have this, it's clip number 4, Biden's speech. This is from yesterday's. It's only 50 seconds, but let's load this up. Not sure what
Trump's mob wasn't a peaceful protest. It was a violent assault. They were insurrectionists, not patriots. They weren't there to uphold the Constitution.
True.
They were there to destroy the Constitution.
True.
Trump won't do what an American president must do. He refuses to denounce political violence.
True.
So hear me clearly. I'll say what Donald Trump won't. Political violence is never, ever acceptable in the United States political system. Never, never, never.
Listen to the Democrats.
It has no place in a democracy. None.
Unless it's the Democrats. Dude, the Democrats are the most adherent to respectability politics and the rules in like the political landscape of all the political parties out there. The Democrats obviously aren't squeaky clean because politicians, am I right? But compared to the Republicans and every other party, they are honestly frustratingly stick up their ass when it comes to following the rules and keeping things clean and keeping things civil and keeping things within the tracks, on track, you know, as far as like what's expected from a political discussion and a political candidate. The idea that the Democrats support political violence is hilarious. It's actually hilarious. When the Republicans, you can't go to any Republican convention or a Republican's house without seeing iconography all centered around the idea of rising up and violently defending your freedoms. Like, the Democrats aren't the ones who glorify the idea of violently rising up to defend your freedoms. The Democrats are the ones that say, go out there and vote. Pokemon go to the polls. The idea that the Pokemon go to the polls party are the ones in favor of violence, while the like don't tread on me people are actually the peace-loving ones, is a delusional take. A delusional fucking take.
You can't be pro-insurrectionist and pro-American.
True.
You know, Trump and his MAGA supporters not only embrace political violence, but they laugh about it.
The insurrection is the open border.
So the insurrection was not just the 3-hour riot that happened at the White House.
The insurrection is the open border. Okay. We don't have an open border. Republicans think anything that's not like the wall from Game of Thrones going from sea to sea and like every single immigrant that shows up getting sniped from 500 yards away from the top of the wall with a Barrett 50 cal, they consider that anything that's not that to be an open border. People entering a nation to seek asylum or to immigrate, even illegally, is not an insurrection. That's not what that is. Even if Joe Biden was welcoming them in with open arms, that would by definition not be an insurrection.
Afterwards, I think that's the least charitable reading of everything that happened. And that's not, if you read any of the charges that either Jack Smith or the Georgia RICO case has alleged against Trump, are saying that, in fact, not much of the focus is on the 3-hour riot at all. Not much of that.
Hold on, Alex, let Stephen finish his thought first.
So not much of those indictments are actually focusing on the 3-hour riot itself.
Alex Jones couldn't let Destiny get like 4 sentences out. After like his long ramble, Alex Jones couldn't let Destiny get like 4 sentences out before trying to interrupt. That's crazy.
It's the least charitable reading of everything that happened. And that's not, if you read any of the charges that either Jack Smith or the Georgia RICO case has alleged against Trump, are saying that, in fact, not much of the focus is on the 3-hour riot at all. Not much of that.
Hold on, Alex, let Stephen finish his thought first.
So not much of those indictments are actually focusing on the 3-hour riot itself. The unprecedented act that there is no answer for, that Kamala Harris or Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton have not engaged in, is using knowingly false election claims for months to try to pressure state electors to change their vote, and then when they wouldn't do that, beg them to elect different electors, and then when they wouldn't do that, create a plot to create fake electors, and then when Pence wouldn't accept that, try to capitalize on that final 3-hour riot at the Capitol building to also make phone calls and tell people to decertify their vote or to switch their electors.
JFK and Obama had alternate electors.
JFK,
no, they didn't.
JFK's story was completely different. I can explain that if you want.
Yeah, please do.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. So
they're just making shit up now.
1960. I believe. So 1960, JFK and Nixon. There was a dispute because there was a recount. I think JFK ended up winning by like 150 votes. At the time, each state decided to certify 2 sets of electors. Decided to choose two different slates of electors.
Depending on how it went.
But they were certified by the states.
They were in the middle of a recount.
Okay, Republicans, here's my message to all of you, if you can hear me right now, all right? You guys don't get to defend the Electoral College because it let Trump win, while also complaining about the fuckery caused by the Electoral College existing and being such a flawed system, okay? You don't get to complain about the shit side of the broken system you guys defend because it gives you an unfair advantage, okay? Because if every president was decided by popular vote, we wouldn't have had a Republican president for quite some time now, okay? We wouldn't have had a Republican president for a while. It would have been, like, not in my memory. Like, I'd have to, like, harken back to Bush. Did Bush even win the popular vote? I think he did. Wait, did he? Did Bush even win the popular vote, guys? Because that was like a really rough election. There was like recounts and shit. He didn't. Not the first time. To know about the second, Bush did. Because Gore, it was like really, really close with Gore and Bush. No, Gore did? Yeah, so like, if we just straight up did popular vote, every like ballot like tallied together, whoever gets the most votes wins, we wouldn't have had a Republican president for quite some time, okay? You don't get to defend the system because it's the only thing giving the Republican Party political viability in the White House, but then also complain about the fuckery it causes because it's such a flawed system. You absolute hypocrites.
None are certified yet. Neither state was. What happened with Trump was that Trump tried to get the states to certify a second slate of electors.
It was Bush Sr. who won the last popular vote. Okay.
Off of conspiracy theory crap that
None of the
election was stolen. Hold on.
They did.
He took it to court. 62 cases.
That's not
30
true.
cases were looked at on merit.
So are they
They're
taking
all
him off
shut
the
down.
ballot now?
That's a separate. That's a separate.
Take him off the ballot. That's separate.
Is the not purest form of election theft is taking someone off the ballot?
Let's get back to the 1960s.
Donald Trump tried to do election theft when he spent an entire year fighting desperately to get like mail-in ballots stricken from validity and like got rejected at every single turn because it's anti-democratic. Donald Trump literally attempted constantly to get ballots rechecked and like blocked, particularly the mail-in ballots. You guys remember that, right? Where the Republicans were doing recounts everywhere and they couldn't find any election fraud, and they just kept failing and failing and failing all of their attempts to find more Trump votes or find like that Biden votes were invalid. They tried for like months and months and months and months and months to prove that Biden didn't really win, and every single time they didn't find any evidence. It's crazy how much bullshit these people pull that it's like, it's so much shit, you forget about some of the spiciest stuff like that. Like when they spent 6 months arguing that the election was stolen and nonstop failing to find any evidence.
It's really bad. So what happened was that they did a recount, and Kennedy ended up winning by, I think, 150 votes, and they chose the Kennedy electors, they certified the Kennedy electors, and Kennedy ended up winning that state.
And that's what Trump said.
What Trump did was Trump tried to get the states to certify an alternate slate of electors. They refused because the court said there's no.
What's up with Republicans wanting to not count mail-in ballots? So it's a two-pronged thing. Donald Trump shit-talking mail-in ballots makes it so that most of his supporters will not vote mail-in ballot, right? And then from there, he advocates to ban mail-in voting, which would basically make it harder, on one hand, for people who are lower income and need to work multiple jobs and have a busy schedule and tend to be more Democrat from voting at all. So that would be a big factor. A lot of people of color in America work multiple jobs and don't have a lot of time to go and spend a whole day taking time off work to wait in line and go vote in person. So mail-in ballots are really important. The fact that they're a lot more flexible with when you can send them in is also a pretty big benefit. They've also always generally had a higher lean in Democrats voting with mail-in ballots than Republicans. So Trump had every reason to not only demonize mail-in ballots to make his supporters not vote that way, but to also advocate for their banning and then after the fact trying to get them stricken, because if he could eliminate mail-in ballots from the board that way, he may be able to unironically steal the election with that alone. That's what I think the plan was from the start, to move all of his voters away from mail-in ballots, to make Democrats want to vote mail-in, and to either stricken those votes after the fact or outright stop mail-in ballots from being valid on election night and be able to take the election that way. Because with just in-person votes, he may have just won, right? And so that's why they literally spent months and months and months trying to get like all of the mail-in ballots stricken from validity.
They are there. And then when that didn't go through, Trump decided to get his own slate of electors above the states that were not certified and tried to use that to force Mike Pence to say that Joe Biden didn't win these electoral votes.
I just need to interject really quickly. So if we want to be precise in terms of the scope of the debate, I think it's about January 6th. And so the lead up to it might be relevant to some of the criminal indictments, but it's technically speaking outside the scope of the January 6th discussion. But if we're going to bring it into the discussion, I think there's an operative word there, knowingly. And that's operative within the context of the charging documents. But the idea that Trump thought that he lost the election and he was...
Yep, no, he literally said weeks before, there's no way that I can lose the election if it's a fair election. He does not actually believe that. He never actually believed that. That was part of the plan, to deny that he could ever lose, to preempt that the election was stolen if he does lose, so that as a backup plan, if he doesn't win, he can argue it wasn't valid and try to fight politically to invalidate the election and keep himself in power. It is obvious that's been his plan from the get-go, and his fans know that's his plan, and they support it. They don't even pretend that's not his plan. You can see it on their Trump signs in their lawns that say Donald Trump, Barron Trump, or like Ivanka Trump, Donald Trump Jr., Barron Trump, and it like goes on like ... more Trumps. Like they want the Trump dynasty to be in power, and it's like different brackets of 8-year like terms.
Knowingly lying and knowingly engaging. No, he believes, I guarantee it, whether you believe it or not, Trump believes that the election was stolen, and he was using the legal recourses available to him at the advice of his legal advisors.
No, Donald Trump did not believe the election was stolen. Donald Trump, so there is a, there are numerous like organizations, nonpartisan political organizations that just track how often politicians lie. Not how often they get things wrong, because it's when a politician is giving a speech or something, it's pretty obvious when they just like misquote something within like a fairly reasonable like margin, like you can tell it was a mistake, and when they just outright lie, right? You can tell Alex Jones is lying here and not just misled, for example. And these organizations track how often Republicans and Democrats lie. Now, Democrats do lie from time to time. You can look at a lot of the most popular Democrats out there and see like recorded times that they've lied on these sites. But when you look at how many times Trump has lied, he is the top of the fucking list, okay? Donald Trump, and even many Trump supporters that I have spoken to, have to admit, is a serial liar, a habitual liar. He cannot help himself. He lies about things that don't even matter, right? I think a good example of how like prone to lying Donald Trump is that one clip of him talking about what his favorite bit of the Bible is. Tell me he's not just full of shit here.
The Bible, you've been talking about how it's your favorite book, and you said, I think last night in Iowa, some people are surprised that you say that. I'm wondering what one or two of your most favored Bible verses are and why.
I wouldn't want to get into it because to me that's very personal. You know, when I talk about the Bible, it's very personal, so I don't want to get into verses. I don't want to get into...
There's no verse that means a lot to you that you think about or cite?
The Bible means a lot to me, but I don't want to get into specifics.
Even to cite a verse that you like?
No, I don't want to do that.
You're an Old Testament guy or a New Testament guy?
Probably equal. I think it's just an incredible... The whole Bible is an incredible... I joke very much so. They always hold up the Art of the Deal. I say my second favorite book of all time. But I just think the Bible is just something very special.
I think the Bible's something really special. I like how he says the Bible over and over again, like that one Family Guy joke where it's like Peter is Han Solo and Quagmire is C-3PO, and Peter forgets or like Han Solo forgets C-3PO's name and is like, oh yeah, you and he says C-3PO, and he's like, oh yeah, C-3PO, yeah, I know you, C-3PO, we're best friends, C-3PO, right? C-3PO, yeah, let's go out there, C-3PO, okay, let's go, C-3PO, and like pretends like he like, it reminds me of that, where he says Bible so many times, you can tell he's nervous and lying, and just trying to think of like whatever words he can say to get him out of this question. I mean, Donald Trump's a literal, like, adulterer. He doesn't give a fuck about God or the Bible. He's full of shit.
That is not true. Most of his legal advisors said that this idea was crazy.
Well, no, but he had legal advisors who were telling him.
If you search hard enough, you can find anybody to validate an opinion. But what you've just done is what I opened with, which is saying he thought the election was stolen, therefore he was justified to engage in insurrection.
Is it right to take him off the ballot? Since you don't want to debate January 6th,
that's for the Supreme Court to decide. That's for the Supreme Court to decide. I'm telling you, that's for the Supreme Court.
That is literally what's being argued right now in court, is whether or not Donald Trump could have reasonably believed the election was actually stolen when he made those statements, because there's a very big difference. There's a reason why conservatives are trying to argue that he genuinely thought the election was stolen, because if he did think that, that was just him using his First Amendment rights to say what he thought. Granted, he may have displayed some irresponsibility in not immediately telling his followers not to raid the Capitol in his name, but you would have a hard time pinning him with like a nefarious attempt at a coup if he genuinely believed what he said, right? However, if they find evidence that he didn't believe what he said and that this was a plot to plan out a way of arguing his way into more presidency illegitimately, then that's a very different scenario. If he knew he didn't win and yet lied and argued the election was stolen, that's just trying to override democracy. Because he knows he's lying, he knows the election was valid, and yet he wants to overturn it anyway. If he really believed it wasn't valid, then that's a completely different story, and that's why the right is so desperate to try to argue Trump actually believed the election was stolen. They and to do that, they have to prove that his ego is the biggest ego on the planet, which is pretty likely, but I don't know if Trump beats Musk as far as ego goes. So yeah, I'm pretty sure Donald Trump can accept reality enough to recognize he actually lost the election.
Supreme Court to decide. According to Section 3 of the 14th Amendment,
why does the United States sanction countries that take people off the ballot?
What? That's not even remotely relevant here.
Oh, okay, all right. So
you know what the United States usually
we have independence. If we do one insurrection, you know it.
It would probably be for things like circumventing the vote, like asking the vice president, for instance, to unilaterally win the election.
So
that would be something that we might sanction in other countries.
So you can't vote for somebody because they made up a bunch of stuff and he's not found guilty anywhere.
Remember how Pence refused to override the election results, and in response at January 6th, a bunch of them were carrying dolls of Pence and were burning them or decapitating them on the Capitol lawn. They saw Pence as a traitor because he didn't use his powers as vice president to overturn the election, which he wouldn't have been able to do anyway, realistically. But because he didn't do what they thought he could do to make Trump win, that they've been saying Pence was gonna do and were really confident he was gonna do, and then he just didn't, they really wanted Pence's head. And I mean that literally. Yeah, they set up gallows for Pence. Yeah, they literally had gallows set up and a guillotine set up specifically for Pence.
But you guys just parroted over again
if you don't like the Constitution, that's your fault, Alex. If you don't like the Constitution, that's on you. Really? Then why are you saying that Section 3 of Amendment 14 requires a conviction? Alex, why did you say that Section 3 of Amendment 14 requires a conviction? Can you put the text on stream?
I would love to do that, actually.
Put the text on. Because you keep saying...
All right, guys.
Military tribunals,
I don't care what it's based on.
Find you guilty.
Let's.
That's why no one was. Because it was bullshit then.
Let's hear from Glenn.
We'll slow down. This is a great conversation. Glenn's about to drop some knowledge.
I'm dominating.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure he is.
Glenn's in remote from Brazil. So Glenn, anytime you have something to say, it's helpful for me if I see a visual cue. Maybe your hand goes up. I can tell you have something you're going to say now. But let us know.
Let me just say, what happens is when you gather together to debate a particular question, you're supposed to debate that particular question. The particular question that we were presented with is we're going to debate January 6th and whether it was an insurrection. Now, I don't blame Destiny and Ed for not wanting to debate that, for wanting to debate a whole set of other issues about whether Trump acted improperly, whether he was naughty in the things he did after the election, because there is no argument to make.
Yeah, Destiny is winning this. I guess it's a 3v3 because it's Glenn Greenwald, the other guy, Alex Jones, and then versus Destiny and the Krasenstein brothers, and then there's the host who's Moonlord. Glenn Greenwald is a herpy. That's a good adjective to call him. Or adjective? Well, yeah, it's a description. He's herpy-like. I would actually call him herpy-like rather than a herpy. Because a herpy goes away, right? Herpes goes away and comes back. That's what it does. That's herpes' whole thing. Glenn Greenwald is like a herpy that doesn't go away. That's just always there and never, ever disappears or goes into like a cooldown season or whatever. Glenn Greenwald is always there. A non-stop herpy, if you will. So he's herpy-like. You can suppress the symptoms, but you can never completely kill the virus. Yeah, you definitely don't want to get the herpes virus. I'm glad I've never gotten it. I know that a lot of people get it from, like, school when they're, like, a kid, and then it sticks with them forever. I was very lucky to never get it from, like, anything having to do with school. Water fountains are pretty common because, like, there are kids who would just, like... I never, ever used the water fountains unless I was so fucking thirsty. That was why. Because, like, there were kids who would just, like, deep throat the water fountain, like, thing. And, yeah, I was just nervous about that kind of shit. Yeah. Yeah, Sam, I don't even get cold sores. Well, sometimes I'll, like, bite my lip in my sleep. But that's not the same. It's just, like, I bit my lip in my sleep and it hurts. But I imagine that is what it would feel like to have herpes, is when you bite your tongue or your lip in your sleep and it, like, takes a few days to heal and it, like, hurts to eat or talk. That's kind of what I imagine it would be like, but it just happens for no reason and comes back and goes away. That's gotta suck.
That what happened on January 6th rises to the level of insurrection, and that's why an extremely aggressive prosecutor named Jack Smith decided not to charge Donald Trump with that crime because he knew there was no way that he could possibly bring a conviction against anybody, let alone Donald Trump, who told everybody to be peaceful when going to the Capitol, about whether or not that was actually an insurrection, whether that rose to that level. And even in a colloquial sense, what we called an insurrection in the past is in a completely different universe. But on the issue of whether there was a real belief on the part of Donald Trump that elections were stolen, I don't understand how anybody could doubt that, aside from the fact that you have to get into Trump's head. In the last 3 elections that Democrats...
Well, no, you can go through his conversations with his campaign, through his text messages. You can interview his lawyers, and you can look at the evidence and try to see if there's any points in which Donald Trump has, say, planned this strategy out, for example. There are lots of ways you could prove that Donald Trump didn't actually believe the election was stolen. That's why it's being investigated. Anyone trying to claim it's impossible to do so is obviously a partisan hack.
Lost. In 2000, 2004, and 2016, a very large number of Democrats believed and asserted that the election was stolen, and was the byproduct of fraud, and the president was, as a result, illegitimate. When I started writing about politics in 2005, the idea that George Bush was the real loser of the election, Al Gore won, was the view of every single liberal and Democrat that I knew. In 2004, there were objections claiming that Karl Rove had interfered in the Ohio vote with the Diebold machines and cheated to make John Kerry lose and George Bush win. And then in 2016, Hillary Clinton and the Democrats said that Donald Trump was the illegitimate winner, that Russia had helped him, and they tried to convince the Electoral College to abandon the certified results of the state. Obviously, you go back to 1960, and a lot of historians believe that election was stolen. So it's not like Donald Trump was the first person to ever wonder or believe that an election was stolen from him. It's a very significant...
It's the first time that the supporters of a presidential candidate who claimed the election was stolen have marched onto the Capitol, broken in illegally beyond police lines, forced politicians and Capitol Police to, like, flee into the building while elected officials have to escape through evacuation routes. Yeah.
Tradition in American political history, if you know anything about politics before 2016. And if Trump believed that the election was stolen, and while it's true, a lot of people in the Justice Department and a lot of people in the White House told him they didn't think it was, he did have advisors and lawyers.
Oh, yeah. It's always funny when lefty-turned conservative grift right-wing figures, like, misreport on things they correctly reported on before they started grifting for the right. It's always really funny because you can, like, compare the clips of them talking about that issue then to the clips of them talking about that issue now. And it's like, interesting how when you first talk about it, you're bringing up, like, citations and sources, and you're talking about how ridiculous it is that people are believing the opposite. And nowadays, you're saying the thing that you're making fun of people for not doing their research for. Interesting. I wonder if you know you're full of bullshit or not. That's how you know they're full of bullshit, by the way. I had to clip my fingernails, guys. They're getting long.
Telling him that they think there was evidence of it, then the question is over, even on these other issues about whether or not Trump engaged in some conspiracy against the United States. But the issue is January 6th an insurrection?
Well, that's right. But I mean, Glenn, since and these guys haven't talked to you, Professor Beatty. Hillary was in videos 2 days ago saying Trump's going to steal this election. So why are they allowed to say it? It's free speech. You don't get indicted for it.
Trump didn't get indicted for that.
Oh my God, they indicted him and they put it in the charging thing in Georgia saying he tested the election. You're hoping people don't read the documents.
Don't read it. It's a RICO case. There's a bunch of behavior that is within a RICO case.
Oh my God.
It's illegal. That's the point of the RICO case.
Yeah, right.
Can I talk about the differences? So Bush versus Gore, what happens? The Supreme Court ruled, and Gore conceded. He stopped saying this election was stolen. He stopped saying I won.
The Supreme Court.
Yes.
Did Gore refuse to certify the vote? I don't remember. Did he do that?
The vote was
He
certified.
didn't have an alternate elected.
Exactly. So
After Trump wanted a Supreme Court hearing. Trump wanted the same thing.
62 cases were brought before judges. And you said earlier, none of them are based on evidence.
Sorry, I'm just speeding it up to get to see if things start to get more interesting. Because right now it feels like it's just Destiny trying to hammer in on a lie that Alex Jones tells, and then Alex Jones telling 5 more lies. So it's just impossible to engage with. I want to skip to when it gets spicier, but I also don't want to spoil myself.
No, you know why? I can play the clips of Obama's.
And now you're going to justify that.
No, you're not. You're going to read my mind?
That's what it sounded like.
To storm the Capitol, that's somehow Trump's fault and he's criminally liable for it, and
still
why
on this
an insurrection.
Well,
I'm trying to be clear what the
Let me explain it. What Trump did was Trump laid out very precisely exactly what he believed had happened. He thought that the vote was being stolen, that our country was being taken from us.
Not believe what he wanted others to believe.
Yeah, that Congress wasn't acting, that Mike Pence was supposed to be the guy to do it, but he hadn't heard good things about them, and they needed to go down to the Capitol building to protest. To protest. Nobody's saying that. You're repeating the same thing. You're like a broken record. You're a broken record.
No, I'm not a broken record.
Trump
every time
every right.
you try to shut me down. Listen, here's the bottom line. Trump's not been charged with insurrection.
He can't not interrupt. I feel like Destiny's got to put his foot down and be more assertive here and just yell over Alex Jones. I feel like that's really the only way, because if you start to get good points off on Alex Jones, he'll just yell lies over you. There's really nothing you can do there, right? Other than overpower him with being more assertive than he is.
Trump
no one said he was.
Trump didn't, but you're saying people can't vote for him.
No, I'm not saying that. That's up to the Supreme Court.
That's do you support?
No one here is talking about him being.
Do you support Colorado and Maine taking him off the ballot?
That's up to the Supreme Court.
No, you punt. Do you think it's good for the opposing party when a guy's way ahead of the polls to remove someone from the ballot?
It's not about him being ahead in the polls or not. It's about whether or not he engaged in insurrection, and if the self-executing part of the 14th Amendment allows states to remove him from the ballot.
Where is Trump found guilty of insurrection?
You don't need a conviction for the 14th Amendment.
About this for an hour.
Alex, read it. Can we bring the 14th Amendment up on?
You're misrepresenting that, and it doesn't matter because we have a right.
He will not allow the 14th Amendment to get read. No.
Right to vote for who we want, right?
No, you don't.
Within reason.
You can't vote for somebody under 35 years old. You can't vote for somebody that's not a U.S. citizen.
It looked like you want to chime in, Glenn.
When the Constitution owns your argument, you have to do everything you can to keep it from getting read.
But he's unpopular, though. He lost. Well, we can't vote for him now.
If you think it's so bad that courts are kicking him off the ballot, what do you think about Trump doing the birtherism card for Obama for how many years? That was the first big political thing.
Oh, yeah. To be fair, if Cenk Uygur was in Destiny's spot right now, he would have started throwing punches at Alex Jones roughly 45 minutes ago at the latest.
He was known for was challenging whether Obama was even born in the United States in an attempt to get him kicked off the ballot.
No, you know why? I can play the clips of Obama's.
And now you're going to justify that.
No, you're going to read my mind?
That's what it sounded like you're about to do.
You're
Play the
scared
clips.
of me talking.
I'm not scared of you talking.
There's clips of Obama and his wife saying he was born in Kenya.
I love the projection for Alex Jones, who hasn't let Destiny get out a single point without interrupting, claiming you're scared of me talking. That is phenomenal.
I don't believe he was born in Kenya. He was born in Hawaii to the head of the Communist Party there, actually. So and who's in his book and hanging out, Frank. So that's what's going on here. It doesn't matter. If Trump wants to say the moon's made of cheese, we have a right to vote for him.
If Trump can say whatever he wants, that's not what's getting him removed from the ballot.
Glenn.
He's a loser.
You can vote for him. You actually.
He's desperate now. Okay, so now he is trying to equate Donald Trump claiming the election was stolen from him to Donald Trump claiming the moon is made of cheese. Are you saying that those claims are equally untrue? That's the implication of what you just said.
You can vote for him if you want. You can vote it. You can vote for him. You can write him in. But the 14th Amendment says he can't hold office if he incited insurrection or gave aid for insurrection.
Guilty of insurrection?
We talked about the Civil War earlier. Nobody was found guilty of violating insurrection rebellion statute during the Civil War. Nobody, and that was an insurrection.
Wait. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my house for a moment. Hello, hi, I'm Ian Crossland, and I'm moderating this awesome debate. Glenn Greenwald's about to speak. I want to hear what he has to say.
Okay, now he's keeping it from getting fun. He's keeping it from getting fun. I feel like here's a good point here's a good point to like put a pin in it. And I'm going to watch this off stream for sure because I really want to see the rest. But obviously, I'm going to link the original video down below because we don't steal content here. I know that I've got a spotty history with Destiny, but you know, I have to credit the videos that I cover. Otherwise, I'm a content thief. No matter what, if I'm reacting to something uncritically, I have to source it. You know, it's YouTube etiquette. Okay, don't get mad at me. All right, don't get mad, but it will be linked down below. I don't want to just steal views, right? I'm not a YouTube content thief. Anyway, that debate, I am excited to see the rest. It's starting off pretty good from what I've seen. Alex Jones just will not allow Destiny to get an argument out because, I mean, anything that Destiny says is going to be like, okay, so this is a lie, this is a lie, this is a lie, here's what actually happened, and it just won't fly. He's got to, like, shut Destiny down anytime he starts to attack anything he said and then pretend like Destiny's been the one interrupting, which, like, we're watching this, and that's just not what's happening. I know we skipped around a little bit, but I don't think the entire, like, way the debate was going completely changed in the time that I skipped through to the point where Alex Jones could claim that when everything was the opposite through the bit that we saw. So, regardless. This has been a long segment, but I hope you enjoyed.